In this section, we're going to talk about how to count eighth notes. Now, eighth notes are one of the most popular note values out there. If you listen to rock music, if you listen to any pop music or any sort of Latin, you've probably heard eighth notes at some point. I'd be absolutely astonished if you hadn't. And so what we're going to do to kind of figure out how to count these and what they are is we're going to relate these and everything else kind of back to quarter notes. Okay, so a quarter note was counted 1, 2, 3, 4, right? There's 4 quarter notes in one bar of music. Now, eighth notes are basically double that. So there's 8 eighth notes in one bar of music. Okay, so in the time that it takes you to play one quarter note, how many eighth notes are there? And the answer to that is 2. Okay, so if I play one quarter note, in that same time, I can play 2 eighth notes. Now, that means nothing when it doesn't actually relate to time. So let's relate that to time. We're just going to put the click on at 60 beats per minute, and I'm going to play a quarter note and then 2 eighth notes. A quarter note and then 2 eighth notes. And you'll see how it all kind of comes together. So the length of one quarter note is equal to 2 eighth notes. Now, on the drums, when you just hit the drum, you hear a sound and then that's it. But let's say that was a saxophone or a trumpet or a piano. You would actually hold that note, for one quarter note, and then the length of the eighth notes would be half of that before moving on to the next note. And so it's still important for us to recognize and realize this when playing drums, because when we hit a quarter note, we know how long of time has to pass before we actually play the next note. Okay, so I hope this is making sense. If it doesn't, just bear with me as you kind of go through all these exercises. It's going to start to make more and more sense. Okay, so next we need to talk about how we're going to count eighth notes. Okay, so when we count quarter notes, it's just simple 1, 2, 3, 4. When we're counting eighth notes, we basically just going to add an and in between. Okay, so quarter notes are 1, 2, 3, 4, and eighth notes will be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so you hear the quarter notes in there, and we're basically just doubling the value of that and making 8 eighth notes. So let's take a look at exercise 1. Exercise 1 is basically 8 eighth notes. Okay, so it's 8 evenly spaced notes within one bar of music, and now let's choose the time. The time is going to be 60 beats per minute I'm going to play it at, and 100 beats per minute. Okay, so just because I'm playing it faster at 100 doesn't mean I'm changing the note value. All it means is the time or the tempo has changed. Okay, so here we go at 60 and 100 beats per minute. Exercise 2, we're going to play the same exact note value and just start to move it around the drum set. So we're going to play 2 on the snare, 2 on the high tom, 2 on the mid tom, and then 2 on the floor tom. I'm going to play this at 60 and 100 beats per minute for you. Up until this point, we've been alternating our hands with all these exercises. But now what I want to do is I want to put the right hand on the hi-hats left hand on the snare drum, and I want to start using the bass drum. The bass drum is going to be on counts 1 and 3, snare drum on counts 2 and 4, and now the hi-hat is on all the eighth notes. Now one thing I want you to focus on when playing the hi-hat is the space between each eighth note. You know, even you advanced drummers or you intermediate drummers who are watching this, this is still something I constantly work on is, okay, are my eighth notes perfectly even? You know, am I able to like manipulate the groove and you know, position the notes in slightly different spaces to make the groove feel laid back or push forward. You know, these are all things we need to consider, but it's very important that you have that control. And that's why I want you guys to learn these at 60, you know, and then learn them in increments and then finish at 100 beats per minute. Okay, so here we go, exercise 3, played at 60 and 100. In exercise 4, we're going to build off the last one. We're going to basically add a couple extra bass drum hits in there on the eighth notes. Our right hand is the same thing, and our snare drum is on counts 2 and 4. I'm going to play this for you guys at 60 and 100 beats per minute. In this last exercise, we're going to play 1 bar of beat, and then we're going to move around the drums for 1 bar using eighth notes. Now the challenge is going from eighth notes with just your right hand to splitting the eighth notes up between 2 hands. Okay, so just make sure that when you go into this fill around the drums, the tempo and the time sounds great, and the notes sound great. It's not rushing into it, and everything should be lining up with the metronome. Same thing when you're coming out of the fill and back to the beat. You need to be lining up with the metronome, and it has to sound great. All right, so here I'm going to play this for you guys at 60 and 100 beats per minute. So that's the end of how to count eighth notes. Now what I need you to do is learn all these exercises at 60 BPM. It's very important that you learn them slowly so you understand the note spacing. Okay? I don't care if you can do it for 1 bar really slowly. I want you to be able to practice each one for 2 minutes straight without making a mistake. And then once you can get it to 100 beats per minute, then you're ready to move on to how to count eighth note triplets.